So first and foremost, I want to say welcome to everybody that is joining in. Um, Shout out to Carolyn, Carolyn Cardosa, for anybody that's out there watching already. Doesn't look like we have anybody on the live streams quite yet, but shout out to Carolyn and Irene, who will be performing at the Las Fotos Project Quinceañera. That's a pretty big deal. 15 years of serving the community. So for anybody out there wanting to learn more, they can go to, I believe the Las Fotos website is lasfotosproject.org /15. And then also we have in the house several of our mentees who will be representing throughout the year as we produce more chapbooks. So definitely want to shout them out. Like I said, it looks like we have a few more people who will be joining in as shortly, I hope. But as we continue on, let's go ahead and get into tonight's lesson. So, welcome everyone. Again, we are presenting our monthly working artist seminars. These are professional development seminars specifically tailored for the emerging artist. Those of you that are looking to expand your career and your skill set as you enter the world of the arts, whether that be as a nonprofit professional, an independent artist, and more. And as usual, we like to do a quick little recap of the previous lessons. So we're going to start off with that. We're going to do a quick little review, especially because this particular session on website design is going to incorporate some elements of design thinking. As you can see here, to just give that brief kind of definition of what design thinking is, design thinking is a process for creative problem solving. And more specifically, design thinking is a human-centered, non-linear problem-solving process that helps you meet the needs of your customers, users, and or audience. And for those that might remember from last month, we used this little Venn diagram to kind of illustrate how design thinking works to a certain degree. So there are three principles that you can use to help you through the design thinking process. One of them being, of course, feasibility. How easy is something to accomplish based on the tech and skills that you have available to you? So, of course, this requires understanding your assets, your needs, plus your own skills that you have currently, and the availability of different types of tools and technology. And viability was another thing that we had discussed, viability being more resource centric. So, this is how realistic something can be accomplished based on your budget, how much time you have to dedicate to this particular project or solution that you're trying to solve or create for your audience. And it includes things like the ease of production and delivery. Sometimes those things can be challenges to having a solution for your community. And then desirability, and that's probably one of the ones that will resonate the most with people. When we look at things that we design, we usually look at them through the lens of being nice, right? Aesthetic. The thing that usually plays into that is going to be the design choices that you make. So things like color, the font, the way that you lay out your text, or even how easy it is for someone to interact with the, object or service or maybe performance that you are providing to the community. So, do we have any questions or any maybe additional comments that folks might remember from last month's professional development seminar? Feel free to use the chat depending on wherever it is that you are logging in from. If it helps, I also have this last slide on the review. Is there anything that anybody kind of resonated with from last month's seminar on design thinking? I know we had some good discussions last month. Right? Carolyn wrote in the chat here on Zoom, picking complementary fonts came up for me recently. Do you mind elaborating a little bit on that, Carolyn?
Yeah, my partner and I were working on some artwork right now for new music, and we're picking out fonts, and it can be kind of daunting. There's so many fonts out there. Um, we actually used like our own writing in as a font, and then picked something that was like complementary. So like what we wrote was it was like cursive, like script writing, and so trying to find something that was like a little more modern and like that didn't really have too much design in it. So something more on like the basic side, but still like wanting it to be bold enough that it stands out. But yeah, it's just there's so many fonts out there and like trying to pick which ones will like go together and not like overpower one another. And then also picking out like the right image that goes along with those fonts as well. Could you want to like tell a story with visually, even though like we do music, it's like, what visual is going to capture someone's eye before they even hear the song?
Right. Yeah, a lot of the things that we create do have such a strong basis in how visual and visually appealing it could be. I mean, the majority of the people in the world are able to see. For the people that are, either visually impaired, hard of hearing, there's other obvious limitations to how they can interact with objects. But yeah, the visual side is always going to be one of the main things that we have to consider. And I agree with you, Carolyn. There's a lot of fonts in the world, and sometimes having something that looks more natural, more handmade, can really create a sense of connection, right? Because the story that it tells comes across as more human or human focused. So thank you for sharing that, Carolyn. Anyone else have anything that maybe came up for them in this past month since we just discussed design thinking? If not, that's all right. These things might come up for you this month. Exactly. Abraham gets it. All right. Well, let's go ahead and continue on. The last thing that I want to remind everyone, of course, about design thinking is, of course, your color palette. That is something that is very important, along with typography. Um, these other two things, design aesthetic, those are things that may or may not be relevant for your particular website design, in the sense of, they may not be things that you can change right away. But copy style certainly is going to be relevant. And this, when we talk about the copy style, that's going to be more your personal voice or the voice that you're going to use for your specific brand. That's why we do talk about a style guide in certain circumstances. And if you remember from our lesson last month, a style guide is going to help not only you as the creator of your brand, but also a graphic designer or web designer if you decide to invest in that particular resource for the development of your own website. The nice thing about technology nowadays, though, is that a lot of these things can be done either free or relatively low cost. So that's something that we'll be discussing definitely today. Yeah, everything is done in-house. That's good if you can pull it off. And like I said, in a lot of ways, there's technologies out there that do make it that much more easier to be able to do it in-house. And as long as you're able to apply some of these design kind of approaches, I think it will result in something that is pleasing and human-centered, especially as we discuss that specific concept in design thinking. And I guess in relation to design, we have this particular quote coming from Lyndon Leader. Lyndon Leader is an American graphic designer and the recipient of over 30 prestigious design awards worldwide. He is also the creator of the FedEx logo, the world famous FedEx logo, which is considered to be one of the greatest logo designs of all time. Leader is quoted as saying, I strive for two things in design: simplicity and clarity. Great design is born of those things. What do you get from this quote? What does it say to you? Now remember, there's no right or wrong way to interpret a quote. I'm going to type that in the chat. Sure. See if I can simply copy and paste that in the chat. Don't overcomplicate the message of your design. Yeah, that's a good interpretation of that, Carolyn, for sure. Anyone else? Any other responses? Abraham?
I think especially when it comes to things that you want to look at really quickly,
Mm-hmm.
like signs or covers, it's something that you had to really understand. Is like people's not going to spend too much, especially nowadays.
Yeah,
People's not going to spend too much time thinking what you're trying to tell them. So it's better to be clear and concise and make sure the design speaks for itself really fast. Otherwise, you're going to lose them.
that's very true. I think, for those of you that might remember, we do live in the TikTok age, and people spend way more time on TikTok throughout the day than any other app. And that's partly because of how quickly people can digest the content. So, overly complicated things can sometimes bog the experience down. So, that is a very good point, Abraham. Anyone else have a response to this particular quote? All right. Well, let's go ahead and continue on. So, here's something that I learned through my particular graphic design classes that might help you. Web Design 101 is really about just starting off with a roadmap. When you start off with a roadmap for your website, and this pretty much applies to any type of website, but you begin with a roadmap to really help you as you develop each web page. Remember, a web page is part of a larger website. And to begin, it's really important to consider the purpose before the planning. You can start by writing out the content, either on a Google Doc or even by hand. You just write down the things that you want the website to contain. But if you understand from the beginning what the purpose is, like if it's a portfolio site, then that's going to inform how you develop the content for that specific website. Portfolio sites are usually for showcasing your work as an artist, and the result is going to be getting hired or at least getting people interested in your work, right? In your content. So a portfolio site at minimum is what I would recommend all of you consider creating. Now, sometimes portfolio sites aren't enough. Sometimes it's also, you know, a good strategy to take to create what would be called an informational site, where you provide information about your work, about who you are, and other ways to connect with them that don't really have the end goal of being contacted and hired for work. An informational site might be something that is maybe more related to like a service that you are providing, and you just want it to be a sort of web presence only. This is going to require a lot less updating than, say, a portfolio site. A portfolio site is going to be, again, the most common type of website that an artist would use, whether you're a writer or a visual artist. A portfolio site is going to have you regularly updating it so that you continue to get gigs. That's the main purpose. An informational site tends to be more static. So you might update it every now and then, And you might have it as a way for people to maybe sign up for a newsletter, but it's also not going to be something that is regularly updated. Then there's, of course, the e-commerce site. That's probably what you are most familiar with when it comes to a website. E-commerce sites are going to really focus on selling you either merchandise or services. The main goal is to go to one specific site or even, through like say social media integrations. A person can click on an object that they see on a social media post and it'll take them back to your website so that they can finish the purchasing process. That's, again, one of the more common ways in which people interact with websites, at least now. Then there's kind of like an all purpose website, which might incorporate elements of all of these. All purpose websites are also very common. There's no right or wrong way to approach, building a website for, multiple purposes. However, it's really, really useful for you to kind of narrow your focus on one style of website from the get-go. What is the most important type of information that people are going to be using your website for? Again, consider the purpose of your website as you begin planning all the content that's going to go on it. Each different type of website listed here is going to have a different call to action for the main home page. Any questions here so far? No? A way to think about how a website works is by looking at it from the lens of a wireframe, right? A wireframe is probably the most common way in which web designers develop a website. It begins with understanding that there is a home page, a landing page. When a person types in the URL, the web address for the website, the homepage is going to be what they see first. And then from there, this is going to be kind of like a spider web. And on the homepage, you should have things that link to other pages that exist within that whole website's wireframe. This reminds you of how Doichi uses her various social media. Yeah, a lot of artists, especially musical artists, tend to follow these sort of strategies by leveraging social media as a way to get people back to their homepage, to their website. That's why, again, websites are very important. You could have content living on social media, but when people want to really understand who you are and what you are able to do, a website is going to provide that much more like background information, we'll call it, on the individual. So, yeah. Now, the way that I have this visual set up is really showing you, what would be the primary purpose for an individual page, right? So that's why we have primary at the top. You might have a portfolio page, you might have a shop page, you should have an about me at the bare minimum, and a way to connect. Now, within each one of those pages, you will likely have a secondary thing. So it'd be secondary information that people are getting out of that specific page. It could be also a call to action. The secondary call to action in the case of a portfolio page might be a link to a shop or a link to, have a person contact you so that you can get hired for whatever service you're providing. Sometimes there might be a tertiary purpose for a web page, which could be maybe signing up for a newsletter or something like that. So yeah, this is what would be considered a basic wireframe for a kind of simple website, I would say. This isn't super broken down or super complex. Uh, the artist's ways. This is similar to what you have seen in the Artist's Ways book, Angie. Yeah, I'm not the first person to create something similar to this. So yeah, you could probably find this on a lot of tutorials even. for building a website. Now, when constructing a website's navigation menu, things to consider are, again, the information or the action that is most relevant for your website's, average visitor. Again, going back to the purpose, right? What are they there for? This is always going to be a question you want to ask yourself as you're creating your website. What is the goal of the person visiting your website? Is it to learn more about you? Is it to maybe see other projects that you have created? Is it to hire you? Or is it to purchase your latest product or service? Now, what I'd like you to do right now to help you begin the wireframing process is write a list of informational categories that are relevant to your personal website. Think about what it is that you want people to come to your website for, and what are going to be some of the categories of information that they're looking for. Some examples can include obviously the homepage, but also an about page, or maybe a blog, or it could be a web store, it might be a portfolio, and it probably will include some kind of contact information. So create that small list of categories that you want to have as your primary purpose for the specific web pages you're going to be building. And if it helps, you have here a little example. All right. So you're going to have a homepage. And again, any one of these could be your homepage. It could be that your portfolio is your homepage. But think of maybe 2 to 3, up to 4 specific categories categories of information that you want to have as web pages on your website. You can include them in the chat if you choose, but definitely write these down for your own reference later. Does anyone have any questions as you're working? If not, that's all right. Just out of curiosity, I know you already have your website, Abraham, but do you mind sharing what the categories are in the main menu of your website?
Well, I can actually show you a couple things. Hold on. Mind stop sharing this?
Sure.
Okay. So first, this kind of relevant. This is when I was taking web design classes. So this is kind of all the projects have. Well, project will look like from the scratch. And then we'll open this, and it has basically a thing you click. Hopefully I can, if not, I'll have to stop and open what I just did. And this is kind of a simple version of my first attempt of making a website. Unfortunately, I lost the more advanced version of this. Let's see if I can open it. Here you go. So as you can see, it has like an intro logo part. It's almost a GIF that I created. And then it's just kind of where we're saying wireframing, just bio, portfolio, different things, right? That we'll put in there. And then I think has contact. Yeah, contact over here. Mm-hmm. And some like if you want to have videos or subscriptions, that sometimes you get big, you can get sponsored of things like that. I was thinking of putting that here. And so another thing when you're making your website, this is kind of you control you. This is kind of how it looks when you're actually coding the thing. Just a lot of different text that if you miss like a little dot or a little slash, it will mess everything up.
Yeah.
Another thing when you're making your website, well, this is when you create it like from scratch. As people will use their tablets, their phones, and in this case, my big computer screen. So the format's gonna change. So the good thing when you get a website that creates already the templates, you don't have to do too much of that unless you really have like a lot of moving parts that you want to change in different devices like phones and tablets. And this is what the other website that I have looks like. Hold on a second.
It
So
is
here it
worth
is.
noting as Abraham prepares to share that your website again doesn't have to be something that you code by yourself.
Mhm.
That coding language is something that you do have to learn if you want to
Yeah.
be that precise. But as Abraham said, there are a lot of services that do provide templates that are very advanced now.
Yes.
Do some really cool things that you know maybe you couldn't do even like 5 years ago. So
Yes. Definitely, it's so easy nowadays. For example, this one I chose this type of format. First, I have this is the website. Homepage is here, and I have these ones over here. But also, besides these ones, just for quick access, I have a way to do it from here. So
mhm.
basically, a little bio at the beginning, and then I have this thing that I call gallery. So people just click it, and it will have, from weddings, fashion, events, pregnancies, portraits, art prints, behind the scenes, and towards also the contacts. So I have contacts here, email, and for the Instagram, I decided to create this so people will just click it and automatically would send them to my Instagram. So once you have the things that you want to have, it's just a little easier. See, you go to the homepage, you create like your home, you have your gallery. See, these are the things that Luis is talking about. You have all these things that you can go to, right? And it's good to break them down so people will just go to the ones they're interested in, especially contacts. Make sure the contacts are really visible.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Yeah, again, for your own purposes, some of these things might change. That navigation menu might be slightly different. However, at the bare minimum, I strongly recommend that all of you have an about so that people can, get to know you a little bit better, and a contact, a way to reach out to you and either contact you for services, for purchases, for interviews. You never know what people are visiting your website for. But at the bare minimum, those would be two categories that you can have as informational pages on your website.
And another one is having stuff that you can sell stuff like, or you can, which I haven't had put on mine, but e-commerce stuff that you can have either like T-shirts, albums, or at least the places you can send them to buy them. It's
Yeah.
it's good to have that as well.
Yeah. And uh there's a lot of platforms out there. Weebly that Angie mentioned in the chat is also a very good platform that you can use to build a website. I'll actually touch on that specific platform in a moment. And Navor in the chat added that, or maybe I should say, suggested that under shop, you could include places that may carry your work. So it doesn't have to be an actual store, it could be a way to purchase, such as, this chapbook can be found at the DSTL Arts website with a link to the site, or it can be at, X bookstore. So that's also another way that you can use a tab or a web page called shop. And if coding is going to be your next art form, Navor, then all power to you. That is actually a type of art. Web design itself is an art form, and coding is an art form, and it can actually produce some amazing things in the right hands. So, you know, if you're going to take that on, I definitely applaud you. But yeah,
I'll
the
choose
most
you from afar.
and like Abraham said in the chat, yeah, the most important thing is to make it easy for your customers. Because again, this is about being, using that design thinking concept of being human centric. You want it to be accessible, you want it to be easy, you want it to really focus on your audience's experience. Um, so that's step one. Now, step two, as you think about each informational category, now think about what is going to be the information that is found on that page. Also, try to identify what your call to action is. A call to action is very important for website design because it's the thing that pushes people to go even further down the rabbit hole. Um, or maybe not necessarily the rabbit hole, but to get them in contact with you. Again, a lot of the artists that I know use their website as a way to get hired. That is one of the primary purposes for us creating websites as artists, as entrepreneurs in general. What is the call to action? As an example, on your homepage, if you decide that your homepage is going to be one of the main primary pages, you could have a brief artist bio, something short, maybe like 2 to 3 sentences. And as an additional bit of information, a secondary piece of information, upcoming or current events that are happening, that you are hosting, that you are leading. It could be a reading, it could be a workshop, it could be an exhibition that you have coming up. And as a call to action, it could potentially be the event registration link. That could be a button that is a very obvious button that you want people to click on so that they can then sign up for the upcoming event that you have. Another example would be an about page. On the about page, you would definitely have a full artist bio. That's going to be the main thing that people are going to be looking for in an about. You could also have a list of past publications or past exhibitions or awards, any kind of honors that you've received. Those would be good things to have on an about page. And as a call to action, it could be maybe an invitation to follow you on social media, or maybe an invitation to sign up for your newsletter if that's a part of your strategy. A newsletter can be both a paid feature in some cases, or it could be a way for you to just simply let people know that you have an upcoming event. So a lot of these things are going to go back to what the main purpose was of your website. Was it to sell stuff? Is it to get people to sign up for events? All of those things, an invitation for revolution, as Abraham said. Those might be the reason why people go to your website. So again, think of 2 types of information that people would be looking for on a specific page under one of those categories that you listed, and think about what the call to action is. What is it that you want them to do, on this particular page? You don't have to have it all completed right now. Obviously, this is an exercise to get you started, but I'll give you like about maybe 3 minutes to brainstorm some information that you want people to get out of the web pages that you will be developing. By the way, Navor in the chat added that some websites have passwords and it encourages people to sign up to or to subscribe for emails, newsletters, that kind of thing. That's not necessarily a bad thing. It can be annoying in some instances, but again, ultimately, the purpose of the website is based on what you want to do, right? As a working artist. And if a newsletter is something that is a subscription based newsletter, if it features exclusive content, then it's not so bad to create that paywall. But again, think about your audience, right? What is the purpose of the website? What is your audience trying to get? And are you making it accessible as well? If you finish your website in 10 minutes, I'd be impressed. I know Abraham works super fast, but not all of us are Abraham.
Not even close.
Spoken like an Abraham.
Well, I think some of them can win because some of them already have websites, right? I think
That's
Caroline
true.
has probably one.
That is true. Does anyone have any questions, by the way, as you're working on this? Maybe like I don't know, an idea of something that they would want to have on a website that they would like to share. If it helps, here's a little visual. I agree with you, Carolyn. Sometimes it is easier to work on someone else's website than your own. But still, it's good practice. And like I said, if you need a little visual to help you think about how you might categorize your information, here we have a slightly more completed wireframe example. And this is different from the first one that I showed you. So again, there's a page category, right? So if it's portfolio, the information that people hopefully will gain, the primary piece of information would be perhaps the gallery of recent case studies or projects. If you're like a graphic designer, you would refer to your photos of your work as case studies. But if it's a recent painting or if it's I don't know, a collection of musical tracks, you can potentially have them listed as like a link to a SoundCloud or some sort of virtual player. Um, if it's photography, in the case of Abraham, it might be, the gallery of wedding shots that he's done, right? And then the call to action as part of that portfolio page would be, a link to the connect page or a link to the, specific email address that he uses to collect basically, gigs. If you're going to have a shop page, if you're going to go into the e-commerce things, that would obviously be merchandise and services that you're selling. And then the call to action would be what we call a purchase pipeline. So, the add to cart and then the checkout and all of those things. Yeah. We're not trying to give you any anxiety, of course. Um, but I can understand, these are sometimes overwhelming tools, right? That we're encouraging you to use, but planning is an important part of being a business owner. And as working artists, you are entrepreneurs. From the very beginning, we discussed that it's important to have that entrepreneurial mindset. You are business owners. You are acting on your own personal interests. All of you are showing up for yourselves every single time that you come to our program. And I think that that's really valuable. And that's really, really a sign of your capabilities ultimately, because you're an artist and you are using every opportunity that you can to express that. So it is good to have this ready, even a basic website. Like I said, it doesn't have to be a fully formed, like e-commerce, Etsy style website. That might be not the purpose of your website right now. If you can build some of those features into a future version of your website, that's great. But right now, the main focus is have a portfolio, have something where people can go learn more about who you are and how they can connect with you. And if you have it set up so that you could sell copies of your chapbook in one form or another, great. We'll do some marketing as publishers, but the reality is that most publishers can't afford to market every single thing that they publish. And we need your help as artists to make it really be disseminated throughout the world as it should be. I like how you frame it though, Nabor. Being ready for the blessings or opportunities that come with completing long form work. Yeah. Even if it is a website that links to everyone's website, that's perfectly good. You could also hire Dr. Rosie, that's for sure. She is a great
Promotions,
person.
promotions.
Does anyone have any questions or anything they'd like to share up to this point? Buckle up, y'all. Yeah, that's right, Nabor. Well, let's go ahead and continue on and discuss some important things to remember. And we did cover this before. A lot of these things do apply across all mediums. So this isn't just for websites. This is also for chapbooks. This is also for zines, your business card, really anything that you create for the purpose of, marketing your work, from print to web. All of these things are going to apply. Visual hierarchy, because the majority of us, like we said at the very beginning, do interact with the world through our eyes. Visual hierarchy is very, very important. It's about leading the movement of your audience's eyes across designs. And a way to do so is to be consistent with the way that you use things like your fonts. Headers are always headers. Body sections are always using body text. That way people know what they're looking at and why it's important to be read first. And on that note, it's also important to keep your font selections simple and consistent. Again, like we talked about last time, it's about readability and legibility. You can have every now and then a nice little fancy font, but don't make that font part of the body text. If that body text is all fancy fonts, if it's all script, it's going to be difficult to read. But consistency is very, very important, especially when it comes to visual hierarchy. There's a reason why there's larger bullet compared to the smaller bullet in this particular case, right? Also, the color palette is very important. Softer colors usually will have a, kind of more inviting tone to them. Palettes that are very, very colorful, maybe more than two or three colors, that can be a little bit much, and it might make your visual hierarchy be thrown off. So try to pick complementary colors and use no more than three, I would say. You can get away with two. Three is probably good to have as like, a specific color for a call to action, like the red on a button, or on a link. Those might help to distinguish them as calls to action, right? And if you're going to be creating graphics, remember that curvilinear elements hit differently than rectilinear elements. Curves tend to be softer, they tend to imply motion, and they tend to be more inviting. Straight lines and hard edges, they invoke this feeling of sharpness, but they also invoke the concept of stability and, in some cases, even formalness, right? Formality. So, if your particular brand is going to position itself as like a very stable brand, you may want to use things that are more rectilinear, squares, rectangles, that kind of thing. So, and again, this does apply across all forms, right? It's not just websites, it's also print. But we are focused today on websites. It's also useful to plan ahead, at least enough so that you understand, where kind of the hidden fees are. These are not all of the web hosting platforms out there, but a web hosting platform that works for you is going to be very important, especially when we start looking at how you're going to start a website. And it does come down to its purpose, right? The most common ones that I have come across or that I see marketed the most would be things like Squarespace and Shopify. These two are the ones that you're going to see always talked about on social media. Typically, if you're a fan of YouTube, your favorite YouTuber probably has been sponsored by Squarespace or Shopify. But there's also things like WordPress, which has been around for a very, very long time, is a very well-established platform. And then, of course, there's Square, which is my personal favorite. You know, Part of the reason why I like to talk about Square is because it's obviously an e-commerce platform, but Square also, allows you to do both in-person and web-based payments. And it integrates with a number of websites, either through widgets that allow you to place items that you're selling onto another website, such as a WordPress site or a Squarespace site. You can always add those widgets and then people use Square to process the payment. But Square also offers website templates, and you get a free website if you sign up for Square. It also doesn't hurt that Square, if you sign up using our affiliate link, it does give you a discount on the credit card processing for up to, I believe it's 3 months or a certain amount of money, depending on which comes first. So that's always really nice. Plus, DSTL Arts also gets a small reduction in the fees for credit card processing for a certain amount of time. But the sort of planning ahead thing that we've discussed about before in business planning and that kind of thing, Square has really helped, at least in my experience, developing Distill Arts and my own personal graphic design and photography and writing business. Like those side gigs have benefited a lot from the expandability of Square. So not only does Square offer free basic sites, but you can always upgrade it. So you get more functionality out of your website later at obviously a cost, but still. Square also provides you with free inventory management and social media sales. So you can integrate with things like Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Google, I believe. Those are also different ways in which you can sell using Square and Square alone. They also, for a paid fee, provide email and text message marketing tools, as well as things like a loyalty rewards program. So if you are the kind of person that is going to be selling things at a lower cost and have regular return customers, that might be a beneficial thing for you. They also offer checking and savings accounts, which are free. Um, just like any other bank, there are certain things that you want to consider before using any bank. But it is actually a feature that Square offers, and also payroll services if you pay for that particular kind of product, I guess you could say, that service that Square offers. And if you at some point decide that you need help and you're going to hire someone to work with you, you may as well have all of that integration in a platform that is very reliable. And then there's also a lot of other app integrations. So it does integrate with things like MailChimp. If you're going to use a second or third party um, like marketing platform, it integrates with that. It integrates with Zapier, all sorts of other services, including QuickBooks. So when it comes to fees, the most basic plan, and this is essentially a free plan through Square. You only are charged for every time that a person makes a purchase. So it begins at 2.6% plus 15 cents for a transaction that is done in person. And you also get a free credit card reader when you sign up for an account with Square. If it's going to be transactions done through your website, it's 2.9% of the transaction plus 30 cents. So that's for the credit card processing. And again, you get a free website and you get a free credit card reader that allows you to take payments both in person and obviously through the website, you can get, online. Um, Square, again, we've been using it essentially since the beginning of Distill Arts. So if you have any questions about it, I could probably answer a majority of them.
We definitely need to be sponsored by Square.
We really should be. We're not officially sponsored, but we do have that affiliate link. So I'll add it in the YouTube videos comments later. Another one, like I said, that most people are familiar with, especially for e-commerce, is Shopify. Shopify is an e-commerce platform. That's like their main thing. So if you are going to be really focused on selling goods and services, Shopify might be the one for you. It is web-based and there is the ability to take payments in person. However, with Shopify, if you're going to be taking payments in person, you do have to spend the money on a credit card reader. They do not provide one for you. And if you're going to be doing the like Zine Fest, book fair, book festival type of deal, having a credit card reader is really, really important. There are other options for that, like PayPal, or even your bank might offer the ability to open up a business checking account, and then you purchase the credit card reader, or in some cases, they might give you a credit card reader based on the volume of transactions that you're making. But again, you do need to have a credit card reader nowadays if you're going to be selling in person. Um, yeah, Shopify, Spotify, they're very similar. So I feel you on that, Navor. But Shopify does offer a lot of website templates, and as part of the basic plan, you also get email marketing, which is very useful. Again, some websites allow you to do paywalls where your newsletter can be a paid feature, a like subscription feature. So that's something to think about if it's going to be part of your larger strategy. Um, the types of services that you do get through Shopify include obviously web hosting for a certain amount of like storage space. You can host videos and you can host documents, that kind of thing on their website. There's also the email marketing tools that are included. Like I said, you can directly sign up for a newsletter and send out newsletters, email newsletters through Shopify without having to go to a third party. You can also manage your inventory and make sales through social media. So very similar to Square in that sense. If you're going to be maintaining stock or inventory on different, books and zines and merch that you're creating, that's something that is very, very useful to have. Both of the social media sales and the inventory management and the ability to create mailing labels and that kind of thing. All of that stuff is very, very useful and can be done through pretty much all of these, with the exception of WordPress. But Shopify and Square is definitely the easiest way to do that. Fees wise, this is where it starts to get a little more complicated. With the fees on the basic plan, Shopify starts at $29 a month for the year, for a yearly plan. So this is like a discount if you pay upfront for a full year. If you decide to go month to month, they charge you $10 extra a month. So it's $39 a month. In addition to that fee, that monthly fee, you still pay for the credit card transactions. So for an in-person transaction, and again, that requires you also buying a credit card reader, Shopify will charge you 2.6% plus 10 cents per transaction, up to 3.5% for what they call premium cards, things like Discover or American Express. Um, those charge more, 3.5% plus that 10% per transaction fee. Online wise, when you're talking about purchases done through your website, it's 2.9% up to the same 3.5% on American Express cards, plus 30 cents per transaction. So there's a range of what they charge per transaction, which is not that different from Square, but those special fancy Discover and American Express cards, those they do charge you more if people use those. Granted, they're a little less common out there in the world, but it is something to consider. WordPress is, I think, a good option, especially for writers. It is primarily a blogging platform, and it also features paywall content subscriptions, which again, we did talk about that, right? There's, those password protected websites that sometimes can be a very useful part of creating revenue for you. These are really, I guess, the use case for WordPress is really more for literary or portfolio style websites, or even informational sites that don't really get updated all that often. There's both a free plan and a personal plan, and both of them work with the pay gating content. So the free plan does allow you to, set up subscriber based content. If you pay for the personal plan, which is only $4 a month, that one also works with that specific feature where you create subscription based content. They also have built-in newsletter features and also RSS feeds, which, if you want to, you can have a free plan, and then using your RSS feed, you can actually have your blog posts appear on another website that is maybe hosted by Square or Squarespace or even Shopify. So that is something that you could potentially use as an added sort of feature or service. Um, WordPress also has the ability to accept donations and tips. So if you want to use that as a way to gather like support from patrons in a similar way as Patreon is set up, that could be something that you can do through WordPress using both the free and the personal accounts, the cheapest accounts that you can get through WordPress. Again, there is the free plan, so it's $0 a month. However, there is a limit of how much storage you get. So you only get up to 1 GB of storage, and I don't believe you get any kind of video content posting. And the storage refers to everything from the images that you upload as part of your website to documents if you're uploading PDFs and that kind of thing. So it is important to consider storage limitations when you're selecting a specific web host. The personal plan through WordPress begins at $4 a month. It does increase the storage space. And like I said, it also offers the pay gating. So you can have subscribers pay you through WordPress to have access to your content. And then even their premium plan, which gives you up to 13 gigs of storage, even that is pretty affordable. It's only $8 a month. Something to consider though is that for every transaction that WordPress basically does for you, it can be anywhere from 4% up to 10% plus whatever the transaction fee is. So if you have regular subscriber content that you're posting, depending on which level of plan you have, it could be either a lower transaction fee or a higher transaction fee. Obviously, the cheaper the plan, the higher the transaction fee. The more you pay for the plan, the lower your transaction fee becomes. But again, this is not including other credit card transaction fees, which I could not find through their website. The one nice thing though about paying the $8 a month if you go with the premium plan is that you can integrate your website with PayPal and people can pay you through PayPal. So there you only are charged the PayPal transaction fees, which are very similar to what we've already seen through Square and Shopify. Now, the one that I would say nearly all content creators are at some point sponsored by, Squarespace. This one is a very, very versatile website platform. I do have to give them credit. They give you some amazing templates. And there is also the ability to take payments in person because they have integration with Square. I couldn't find it on their website to confirm this, but I remember many years ago, and again, I've been using Square since the beginning of DSTL Arts, since 2012. And several years ago, I remember receiving an email from Square saying that they either acquired or are part owner of Squarespace. So it's a little confusing because their names are so similar. However, Square does integrate with Squarespace, and that is how you can take in-person payments. So you do have the ability to do in-person payments as well as obviously your web-based payments. Um, in addition to that, though, of course, Squarespace offers the web hosting. They also offer those paywalls for digital content and membership. So you can sell things like digital zines. You can create your subscriber content and have that specific paywall that people can, you know, I guess, benefit from. It also has the same sort of social media sale integrations with Meta, so Facebook and Instagram. I don't believe you have any other type of social media that you can use currently with Squarespace. However, I'm sure they're always updating it. And then just like with Square and WordPress, and I believe even Shopify, you can accept donations depending on how you set it up. Um, donations are, if you're collecting donations as a nonprofit, there's specific language around that. If you're collecting donations as an individual, just know that that is still, um, taxable revenue for you. So With Squarespace, they start off at $16 a month for their most basic plan. That is also a yearly plan, so you pay upfront the whole year and it comes out to $16 a month. For this basic plan, you have a 2% online transaction fee, and then there's a 7% transaction fee for those subscriptions. So those digital downloads, those memberships, that kind of thing. So do have that in mind. And then their 2% online transaction fee is on top of the 2.9 up to 3.2% plus 30 cents per transaction for the credit card processing. Of course, for in-person sales, because this is an integration with Square, the very first one, you would be charged the in-person transaction fees that Square charges for any kind of credit card transaction. But it does integrate with your inventory management and all of that stuff that Squarespace provides. So I hope that helped. I realize it's kind of boring, but again, these are the what I would consider the top 4 web hosting platforms that you will likely find if you do a search. And a fun fact, Angie brought up the web host or website Weebly. Weebly is actually owned by Square. So the free website that you get through Square is a website that is hosted by Weebly. And, Weebly, just like all of these other ones, offer those website templates. You don't have to sign up for Square in order to use Weebly. However, like I said, if you're going to be doing the in-person sales thing, I strongly recommend that you really just invest from the get-go in a platform that allows you to do in-person transactions. And that could be for any kind of service or uh, you know, merchandise that you might be selling through your website. Yeah, I'm not too familiar with Hostinger, but Carolyn, if you've already started working on your website and are using Hostinger, then definitely keep at it. If it has all of the features that you're looking for and it works for you, by no means do you have to use any one of the ones that we discussed here. The reason why I focused on these 4, though, like I said, is because these are the ones that are the most common, and also the ones that I know the best, or at least in terms of the most oh, what's it called? Consumer awareness, right? Those have the highest consumer awareness in my experience, which is limited, I will say. But thank you for sharing that added one. Hostinger, Hostinger. Does anyone have any questions so far? I know this isn't the most exciting part, but that is yet to come. Again, as you think about what web host you want to use, design thinking is going to always bring you back to these basic concepts, right? Put the human needs first, right? Which one is going to be the nicest looking? Which one is going to be the easiest for you to use? Which one is also going to be the cheapest and most affordable one for you right now? Think about that Venn diagram, right? Which one has a nice balance of desirability, feasibility in the sense of what is, possible given your skill level currently, and then viability. Which one can you essentially afford? Which one is the one that's going to require more time for you to set up? All of those things. Luckily, all of the ones that we did cover do offer those website templates, like I said. And depending on the plan that you are able to afford, you can always upgrade it. You can always modify it so that it really adapts to your needs in the long term. Now then, let's see who does it well. This wouldn't be a proper website design seminar without us doing a little bit of critiquing of other people's work. So for that, let me share with you here some websites that we have come across in the planning process of this seminar that we think work really well. The first one here is the website for the author Sandra Cisneros. Sandra Cisneros, for those that might not be familiar, is a poetess and writer that has been in the field for decades. I believe she's also a Nobel Award winner, if I remember correctly. But what do we notice right away? What do we see as we land on the homepage here? We have obviously lots of photos. That's right. Thank you, Julie. And descriptions. Definitely. And again, this is the homepage. So as we scroll, yeah, there's accolades, no distractions from the content. Very good. Yeah. Ultimately, it's a very simple website. There's nothing that's super fancy about it, but that also I think says a lot about, the purpose of it, no? It has a very simple navigation. That's right. And I also think that it's really nice to see that it is bilingual on the very, very first landing page that we have. We have things that are both in English and in Spanish, using the layout to the benefit of the audience. Sandra Cisneros is a bilingual author. Therefore, Sandra Cisneros probably asked their designer to create something that is going to be accessible in that way. Also, if we look at the categories for the header up here, you'll notice, right, there's the home. There's also biography, news, books, events, letter, guest book, homenajes, and pilón. And if we were to click on each one of them, you'll probably find the information you expect to find, right? Biography, it's about Sandra Cisneros, right? So it gives you a sense of who Sandra Cisneros is, and that's basically it. Under news, things that have happened in recent times, right? The paper book version of her book is being announced. Other things that are just your occasional updates. Books, I think, is going to be pretty obvious. They are books. These are the things that have been published by Sandra Cisneros that are currently available. And if they're not available, it at least gives you information about it. We also have events. If you notice here, more info, it's highlighted. It's kind of a small call to action, but it's there, right? Everything is pretty consistent, etc., etc. And if we go to Pilon, Pilon is just extra little things. And it is a unique way of showing off Sandra Cisneros' Instagram, right? So this acts as kind of like a little connect page, right? It's a way for us to be able to find more information about Sandra Cisneros and to be part of the Cisneros community. I don't know how familiar some of you might be with Peter McKinnon, but Peter McKinnon is a Canadian photographer and content creator. It's pretty well known in the photography YouTube circles. And this is his website. And this is just what we see when we go directly to the website. This is the landing page. What do we notice here on this particular home page? What are some things that stand out to you? And again, keep in mind he is a photographer and content creator for YouTube, or on YouTube, I should say. Remember, we were saying about digital content and paywalls. Here you have a perfect example of how that might work for a visual artist. There are offerings. Thank you, Navor. Motion graphics. Again, another digital download. And then YouTube. Right? So a connection or direct link to his YouTube channel. And as a call to action, aside from the clicking, right? You see here you have the distinct color. You also have at the very bottom, sign up for his newsletter. I know that because I do occasionally watch Peter McKinnon's YouTube channel. I know that this website was created using Squarespace. So if you are interested or curious about that, this is at least one example of how Squarespace can be used. Yes, Abraham?
It's interesting that the first website we saw with Cisneros,
Mm-hmm.
it's heavily text, you know, and this one's more visually heavy, you know,
Yeah.
because of the two forms of art they use.
Right.
Even the little signature on the left corner.
Uh-huh.
It's so tiny, so it's everything's about the visuals on this one.
Yeah. Which makes sense. He's a photographer and content creator, right? And if we look at the informational categories that are listed on his website, you have shop, which you can barely see. Then you have the about, right? And then you have contact. So they're not super prominent because those, I would probably argue, are not the main call to action. The main call to action is to scroll, right? And what are the main things that we see first and foremost? Merch, limited edition drops, limited edition prints, Lightroom presets, motion graphics. So the real point of his website is to be more passive revenue, not active, right? So he's not trying to get hired to do photography gigs. He's just trying to sell you stuff. And there's no shame in that. Right? Now, this next website we're going to visit is the website someone very near and dear to our hearts. See if y'all can figure out who this might be from the jump. Yeah, it's a celeb, someone that we have actually in the house. And it is proudly powered by Weebly. So we have here a nice little blog page, right? And then if we click on photo album, we have a collection of photos, very nice, neatly organized in sets, in batches. Notice the selection of photos as well, right? I do have to give our creator here credit in that the photo selection is deliberate. It's not just every single photo that was taken in this time period. So that is part of the preparation process, right, for a website. We have an about page, which, if you still haven't figured it out, this is Angie's website. I'm glad that this is your favorite, Carolyn. Yeah, this is Angie's website. So this is our very own Angie Sylvia's website. And like Angie said earlier in the chat, the about page is nothing serious right now, right? Angie has created a simple website that at least showcases Angie's interests and does give us some insight into who Angie is, right? It's you know, uh it's a way of not overwhelming her two Instagram followers and her cat. So yeah, and then of course there's the contact page, right? And we have a simple form that allows you to get in touch with Angie, right? To talk about photography, to talk about uh, you know, writing. I love the about description. Yeah. So as you can see, like your website can be fairly simple, but still enough for people to get a sense of who you are, right? And it doesn't have to be something that you're spending a shit ton of time developing right away. I do have one more website to share. Abraham already shared his. So, in that same spirit, I share now with you this. So, this is my website, my personal website. It is a work in progress. I will not tell you that this is something that I have entirely finished. However, it's more or less how I want it to be. Remember our quote from earlier. In design, it is really good to have simple and clear communication. And yeah, it is a work in progress to a certain degree. But for the most part, this is all I really feel I need for my personal website. So this is the homepage. There is nothing more. All you get is just my hello and a brief description of my backstory, right? I'm the founder and director of DSTL Arts. Uh, if you click on who is Luis, it takes you to my about page with a small portrait of me, my slightly longer bio that explains to you that, my interests really are based on my upbringing. So it's very cultural in that way. This is also a collection of all of my different credits as a publisher, as a poet. So all the different ways in which I have published or self-published work. These are my exhibition credits, all the times that I have been a part of an art show or a photo show, some awards and recognitions that I have received dating all the way back to 2005, and then my 2 artist residencies that I have had up to this point. So very much something that I uh what? Forgot to list model. I appreciate that. But yeah, this is it, right? And then as a call to action, people can learn more about DSTL Arts. And then, of course, being that this is also an about page, I do obviously need to clean up my Instagram. However, I have also added follow on Instagram. So you can follow my personal account there, which I have not used in over a year and a half now, I think, maybe even longer. But like I said, it's all kind of a work in progress at this point. Now, I did build this using Square, so full transparency there. Um, and again, we're not sponsored, but I definitely believe that Square offers a great platform because if you click on buy stuff, you can see here my collection of photo prints that I have on sale at the moment. And these are pretty old. So a lot of these things are from several years ago. It does require updating, but again, this is all based on Square. If you click on it, it creates the purchase pipeline like we talked about. So it's kind of simple that way. Um, and then if you go here back to the homepage, click on latest posts, you will see this is where I am still building it out. This is going to be essentially a blog where I'm going to be highlighting not just my poetry, but also my photos, art, and other things. Um, and I only just today actually uploaded this. I know that it said February 15th. I need to actually fix that on the back end, but this is a semi-edited version of the preface from my first collection of personalized poems that I did. So, yeah. Any questions about any of the things that we covered so far? We have gone over a little bit on time. I was going to show you the back end of the Square website. However, before I try to do that, I do want to give y'all the homework assignment for anybody that needs to log out early. Um, and again, this is kind of going to be a work in progress. I don't expect y'all to have this done in the next couple of weeks or anything, but really think about the design thinking principles that we've covered up to this point and reflect on what makes your art appealing to your audience. Use that as a kind of a starting point as you develop your website. And As you do so, start thinking about what kind of colors and what sort of web-friendly fonts you might want to use. Um, Ones that really reflect your brand's personality. And if it helps, create that style guide that we had talked about. Think about how those things can maybe translate over to other things like flyers, um, business cards, postcards, whatever other marketing material you might end up using. And then if you are ready to start creating either a logo or some of your marketing material, you can use either Adobe Express or Canva or any of the listed website web hosting platforms that we talked about today. And you can start crafting your designs, whether that be your web page, again, your logos, even social media posts. This is really now about using all of the tools that we've discussed over the last several months to start creating your web presence as a working artist. Again, as entrepreneurs, as artists, you are essentially promoting your businesses through whatever your online presence might be. So think about these principles that we've been discussing and see how they apply in your life. Again, you don't have to have your website finished in the next month or so, but if you want help, obviously we are here to provide you that support. And if you do have a website that you actually finish within the next month, we'd love to see it and maybe even show it off to the rest of the world. For anybody watching on the YouTube or our Instagram live, you can also find out more about DSTL Arts by visiting distillarts.org. You can also follow us on social media using at DSTL Arts. And then our direct email addresses are here if you have any questions about any of the information we covered today. So with that, I'll go ahead and stop sharing. And again, if anyone has any questions, you're more than welcome to ask. If you feel overwhelmed at the moment, that's fine. Uh, Abraham will be offering his office hours tomorrow, so you can ask questions of Abraham tomorrow. You can also reach out directly to me, and I'm more than happy to answer questions as well. All right. Well, if there are no questions, then I think we'll go ahead and end it there. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. I hope y'all have a lot of inspiration after looking at the websites that we looked at and, thinking about the content that we covered. Again, don't feel like you have to have a website complete within the next week or two. This might be something that you develop over the course of, a month or so. And if you want our support, we are more than happy to be there for you. So take care, everyone. I hope y'all have a great rest of your week, and we'll see y'all soon. Take care, everybody.